The town of Marlow is renowned for its pretty riverside location and has rightly been called the jewel of the Thames. Tourists from home and overseas are visiting the town in increasing numbers, but in the days of Stone Age man there was nothing here but a marshy lake, and they preferred to live in the nearby Chiltern Hills. If the Romans came, they were not impressed and quickly hurried past. It was the Saxons who drained the marsh and called the area Merlaw, meaning what is left after draining a mere. Marlow is not an old town like York or Chester and is generally recognised as being Georgian, although a number of the buildings are much earlier. We shall be looking at the town in both historic and current detail, visiting Sir William Borlase School Fete, taking a jaunt around Marlow's many pubs, and concluding with the biggest one-day event of its kind in the world, the Marlow Regatta. As the sign on the bridge says, "Welcome to Marlow," and this is Marlow. Let's start our tour by looking at the suspension bridge with its twin towers linking Buckinghamshire with Berkshire. It was built between 1829 and 1832 by Tierney Clark, who had constructed an almost identical bridge across the river Danube in Hungary, joining Buda with Pest, which was considered to be his masterpiece. The bridge was last restored in 1966 and before that in 1860. A weight limit of 5 tons is strictly imposed. On the Berkshire side of the bridge, the flags fly outside the Complete Angler Hotel, which started its life as a very small inn owned by Wethered's Brewery, and was known as the Waterside Inn, boasting some 6 rooms. Isaac Walton is believed to have written his world-famous book on angling in and around Marlow in 1653, and it is from his book that the name for the inn was later taken. The Complete Angler enjoys an enviable location overlooking the river and weir, and amongst famous people of the past who have stayed in the hotel are Noel Coward, Edgar Wallace, Dame Nellie Melba, Scott Fitzgerald and many others. Since 1980, the hotel has been owned by Trust House 40 Limited, when it was acquired from Sir Ian and Lady Bowater. Just across the Thames stands All Saints Church, whose spire can be seen for many miles around. Although it has the appearance of being an old church, it is less than 200 years old. The previous church was subjected to frequent flooding, and in December 1821 was completely surrounded by floodwater. The congregation inside were cut off, necessitating the ladies to be carried to dry land by their menfolk. Part of the church collapsed in 1830, and in 1832 it was demolished. Work then began to erect the present church, and was completed in 1835, although various additions were made after this date. The spire was damaged by lightning in 1897 and had to be replaced. In the causeway on the west wall of the vicarage, this sundial was once sited on the old church until it was demolished. Having been resited, it has remained here ever since. The Naked Lady statue is a memorial to Charles Frohman, who was a well-known American theatre impresario during the early 20th century, and he loved Marlow more than any place in the world. The model was a local lady and was no doubt extremely popular. Each year a cup is awarded by the Bucks Association of Local Councils for the best kept village in the county. Marlow won this in 1987 and again in 1989 within the category of having an urban population of more than 3,000. The War Memorial, erected in memory of local men who lost their lives in both World Wars, leads us to the end of the causeway and Burgers, the Continental confectioners, who are very much a part of the Marlow scene. Mr. Burger Sr. commenced business on these premises in 1942, although there was a baker's here in the early part of this century called Carter's. Still very much in the business, he is ably assisted by his 2 sons Bernard and Philip. The busy High Street has a number of Georgian or earlier buildings, like these 2 houses standing on the corner of Pound Lane. The fronts are Georgian, but the backs are believed to date from the Elizabethan era. Could this be a case of a go-slow by the Elizabethan builders? Many period houses have been transformed into shops or offices, so it's refreshing to find 2 such houses occupied solely by residents as originally intended. On the opposite side of the High Street is another fine Georgian house, now used for business purposes. One of the finest examples of Georgian architecture is Cromwell House, now the post office, which is a classical townhouse dating from the 18th century. It was once occupied by Tierney Clark, who built the suspension bridge. The post office was previously located at number 31 West Street and moved here when those premises became too small to cater for Marlow's increasing population. A 17th century clock surmounts the Crown Hotel, situated in Market Place at the far end of the High Street. Built in 1807, it was originally the town hall and had open archways. The Crown Inn was then located next to the town hall, where Boots is now sited, and eventually took over the town hall, as this old picture shows, before transferring totally to its present site. The obelisk stands on the spot where the original Timber Market Hall was situated and commemorates the opening of the Hatfield to Bath Road, which ran through Marlow. These days the obelisk serves the useful purpose of a small mini roundabout, and it is doubtful whether drivers have the time to take note of the information shown. The history of a town is often best reflected at second-story level or upwards, and above Barclays Bank is another reminder of a bygone age. The little stone house in the High Street has no known history, but it is a fine example of a small period townhouse. Clark's the Butcher's has been a butcher shop as far back as any records show, and although it has been under different management for some time now, the well-known name of Clark's has been retained. Opposite, above Oddbins, some thoughtful person from the past had the foresight to provide us with these historic dates. Situated in the centre of the High Street, Wethered's Brewery has been on this site since 1788, when the lease was acquired by Thomas Wethered. His father, George, had previously started a brewery in Marlow in 1758, although its location is by no means certain. The freehold of the White House shown here was purchased in 1820. For many years, Wethered's were the largest employers of labour in the town, and it was once said that Marlow had two industries, the making of beer and the drinking of it. Wethered's were bought out by Whitbreads in the middle of this century, and the premises will shortly be vacated when Whitbreads move lock, stock and presumably barrel to another nearby locality. What will eventually replace the brewery is not yet known, but it will be sad to see the departure of an industry which has been a large part of Marlow for over 200 years and which has done so much for the benefit of the town. Some of the shops in the High Street, although not qualifying as historic, have been with us for a number of years and will be instantly recognisable to any previous Marlowian who left the town some 10 to 20 years ago. Sadly though, the once familiar name of Chalk's the Ironmongers can no longer be included amongst them. The Liston Court complex was erected in the mid-1980s within the grounds of New Court, which was the home of Mrs. Nestor Liston, a well-known Marlow benefactor. On her death, it was bequeathed to the town, and care was taken with the layout and design to ensure that the finished result would be an added attraction to the town. In the centre of the complex, a small village square atmosphere has been obtained, offering space and seclusion and yet remaining only a few yards from the busy High Street. West Street is one of the oldest of Marlow's streets, parts of it dating back to the 16th century. It's normally very busy, but seen here on one of its quieter days. The old house a little way down on the left is one of the few Georgian townhouses in Marlow which has not suffered any outward alteration. Many Georgian houses are not particularly attractive in their design, but efforts were usually made to provide something pleasing to the eye above front doors or archways. In this case, very attractive ornate carvings. The front door, with its polished knocker, helps to highlight the entrance to the building. The Queen Cottage is approximately 400 years old and was previously the old Queen Public House. A little further along West Street, these cottages date from a similar period. One of the oldest buildings in Marlow, which is still in use as first intended, is Sir William Borlase School. Founded in 1624, Sir William Borlase stated the object of the school was to teach 12 poor pupils to read, write and cast accounts for a period of 2 years. Shortly after the Education Act of 1870, the school became a boys' grammar school, and it is only in the past 2 years that girls have gained entrance. The poet Shelley lived in West Street from 1817 to 1818, writing The Revolt of Islam while his wife Mary wrote her novel Frankenstein. He also found time to laze on a boat on the river and obtained exercise by walking 60 miles to and from London. With the state of today's traffic, it is possible that we will all be following in Percy's footsteps in the near future. The house remnant stands opposite, which has been owned by the Wethered family since 1825. Built in the 18th century, it became a Royal Military College in 1799 and remained so until 1812, when the officer cadets transferred to Sandhurst. A field at the rear of the house is all that remains of the old parade ground, where once George III inspected the cadets in resplendent uniforms, as this picture, owned by the Wethered family, shows. The house originally consisted of 3 stories and was home for some 400 cadets at the height of its military college history. The stable block, together with the clock and cupola above, remain little changed since they were built between 1690 and 1700. At the far end of West Street stands Weston House, a Christopher Wren house dating from 1699, complete with another decorative display above the front doorway. Returning down West Street, we move into Quoiting Square. Whether or not quoits was ever played here is open to debate. Platt's garage was started in 1926 by Jim Platt's father, and above a plaque carrying the coat of arms of William Clayton, who was lord of the manor in the early 19th century. Next door are 2 Elizabethan timber and brick cottages, now Platt's Electrical. Behind the square is Christ Church, the United Reformed Church, founded in 1690 and rebuilt in 1840. White-painted Elizabethan cottages stand on the corner of Oxford Road with West Street. In the centre of the square, even this red telephone box now has a ring of history about it. From Quoiting Square we return to Market Square and enter Spittal Street. Very little of old Spittal Street remains, but here, high up above one of the shops, another date from the past appears. The family-run business of Astlins the Butchers have traded here since 1935, with John Astlin providing a friendly personal service to his customers. On to the very new. The small shopping complex of Liston Court was obviously not designed to attract the fishing fraternity, but the finished result is certainly an improvement on the bland parade of shops it replaced. Tucked away just off Spittal Street is the Methodist Church, built for a total cost of £2,200 at the turn of the century. The founder of the Methodist movement, John Wesley, frequently visited Wickham, but preached in Marlow only once, on September the 28th, 1742. Dean Street today is a rather ordinary-looking thoroughfare. However, as late as the 1920s, terrace cottages were packed closely together, and it was regarded as the slum area of the town. Drunks abounded, and policemen with truncheons drawn walked the street in pairs. On the corner with Chapel Street, a weekly market comes to town. Marlow was famous for its various markets until well into the 20th century, but they then ceased, and it's only in the past 2 years that the market traders have returned. Let's look around some of the stalls.
They're smaller still, yeah. Lady wants a box.
I won't move too fast because I've got to bend away from it for the moment. Don't move quickly.
I like to be on TV, it's nice, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah.
Chapel Street is a very busy street, providing the main exit from the town to the Marlow bypass. A terrace of period cottages with small doorways do their best to cope with the constant traffic noise, but it must be enough at times to turn the inhabitants to drink. And, talking of drink, it's very thirsty work touring the town, so let's look at the choice of pubs available in Marlow, starting with the 17th century Chequers Inn. And while looking, let's listen to, or sing along with, some appropriate pub-type music. All together, just one more time. Feeling suitably refreshed, we make for Institute Road and Marlow Library. It was originally known as the Institute and was intended as a place where the youth of the town could meet for recreation and discussion. Had it been built today, a pub would probably have fulfilled this function more adequately. And so to Station Road we go, or to be more precise, Station Approach, the home of British Rail and Marlow Station. Well, not so much a station, more of a concrete embankment. But until the late 1960s, Marlow possessed a fine Victorian station, shown here as it was in 1948. The railway came to Marlow in 1872 and became known as the Marlow Donkey, for it replaced the mule and donkey trains which used to haul goods along routes, some of which followed the river. The diesel train of today is a far cry from the old steam engines to which the name was first attributed, but the affectionate term donkey still survives. Without doubt, the most magnificent Georgian building in Marlow is Marlow Place. It was designed by Archer and built for John Wallop, later Earl of Portsmouth, in 1720. George II lived here for a time when he was Prince of Wales, prior to his accession to the throne in 1727. It then passed to his son and heir Frederick, who retained the residence until his early death in 1751. St. Peter Street, or Duck Lane as it was first known, is now a tranquil backwater of the town, but at one time it was a busy main street, for the old timber bridge crossed the Thames from what is now the complete Anglers Gardens to the point where the slipway is sited. Much of Marlow's trade was moved by water, and wharves once stood here with the frequent arrival and departure of barges. It is still the most well-preserved area of Marlow, and little has changed over the years. Almost all of the houses are authentic with the period and are kept in an immaculate state of preservation and restoration. In many cases, the names given to various houses reflect their location. What is perhaps most interesting is that townhouses and cottages alike mingle alongside each other, whether by accident or design, and yet the overall view to the eye is one of complete harmony. Needless to say, all these houses are listed, which should ensure that this part of Marlow's heritage remains unchanged for the benefit of tomorrow's generations. This attractive brick and flint cottage by the river completes our look at the houses and takes us to the Two Brewers pub, where Jerome K. Jerome wrote his famous book Three Men in a Boat. St. Peter's Roman Catholic Church was the inspiration of Charles Scott Murray, a local man and one-time Conservative Member of Parliament for Bucks. The church was built by George Myers of Hull to the design of Augustus Pugin in 1845 and stands on land which was previously a farmyard. During the 1960s, the original church became too small to house the increasing numbers of worshippers, and an extension was added to accommodate a further 350 people. Next to the church is the deanery, most of which originated in the 17th century. However, part of the building seen on the left dates back to the 14th century. Backing onto the deanery is the old parsonage, and again part of the original 14th century hall can be seen. We arrive at Marlow Lock just as one of the river steamers glides serenely through on its way to collect passengers from Higginson Park. Marlow's first lock was a flash lock, which was a centre opening in the weir, and river vessels were required to be laboriously hauled through. The pound type of lock came into use in 1826, and the first lockkeeper's house was built. The present power-operated sluice gates were introduced around 1960, and the lockkeeper was given a new house. He was not, incidentally, the same lockkeeper as in 1826. During the summer months, the lock is in continuous use from soon after dawn until just before sunset, catering almost entirely for pleasure boats, the days of the commercial river barges having long since gone. Just behind the lock, these houses, each with their own moorings, were built in 1968. They were designed to closely resemble the look of the old Marlow Mill, which stood on this spot until 1965, as shown here in this old photograph. The main recreation area for the town is Higginson Park, seen here in leafy splendour during early summer. The park was named after General Sir George Higginson, a Crimean War veteran. He was a proud Marlovian and a friend of the royal family. In 1926, Princess Mary came to the town and presented Court Garden to him. He in turn then presented it to the town. The Georgian House became municipal offices, and then in recent years was extended and refurbished to become the Higginson Park Leisure Complex. A range of sports catering for all tastes are available. The Marlow Bowling Club play on what was once the vegetable plot of Court Garden. The club was founded in 1922 and over the years has maintained an extremely high standard, winning many cups. The 3 tennis courts have recently been resurfaced and are available for hire by the hour to the general public. Whilst the indoor swimming pool is not to Olympic standards, it does offer an amenity hitherto unknown in Marlow, unless of course you are willing to brave the waters of the Thames. Whilst looking at some of the other sporting facilities, we must also mention the fine theatre, excellent conference and wedding reception facilities, and the newly opened restaurant and bar, which are housed within the complex. Outside again, the Marlow Park Cricket Club enjoy the sunshine in a most attractive setting close to the river. What could be nicer on a summer's afternoon than watching a batsman hitting the ball for 6, or missing it altogether? If you're young enough, the Children's Adventure Playground may keep you occupied, and you can jump up and down with delight. It's not recommended immediately following a large meal. For the less energetic, maybe a round of putting is the answer. But for the vast majority of people, it is quite sufficient to take to the footpath and walk by the river. Or just sit by the river. Or lay down with your knees up in the air by the river. Failing all that, why not take a trip on a river cruiser? Or maybe in a motorboat. But if you're a dad with 2 small children to look after, you may not be all that happy wherever you are.